didn't know but we would be required to bleed in it like Freemasons. But it was not so. He worked it up dry with his hands, and all the while the savages down there on the plain drawing nigh to us. And when I turned back, the judge was standing, the great hairless oaf that he was, and he took out his pizzle, and he was pissing into the mixture, pissing with a great vengeance, and one hand aloft, and he cried out to us to do likewise. We were half mad anyways, all lined up, Delawares and all, every man save Glanton, and he was a study. We hauled forth our members, and at it we went, and the judge on his knees, kneading the mass with his naked arms, and the piss was splashing about, and he was crying out to us, "Piss, man, piss for your souls, for can't you see the redskins yonder?" And laughing the while, and working his great mass in a foul black dough, a devil's batter by the stink of it, and he had not a bloody dark pastry mat himself, I don't suppose. And he pulls out a knife, and he commences to trowel it across the south-facing rock, spreading it out thin with the knife blade, and watching the sun with one eye, and him smeared with that blackening and reeking of piss and sulfur, and grinning and wielding the knife with a dexterity that was wondrous, like he did it every day of his life. And when he was done, he sat back and he wiped his hands on his chest, and then he watched the savages. So do we all. They were on the Malpas, but they had a tracker who followed us every step of that naked rock, falling back at each blind head and calling out to the others. I don't know what he followed, scent perhaps. We could soon hear them talking down there. Then they seen us. Well, God in glory knows what they thought. They were scattered out across the lava, and one of them pointed, and they looked up, thunderstruck no doubt, to see 11 men perched on the topmost rim of that scalding atoll like mist-flown birds. They parleyed and we watched. We had, I suppose, an hour. We watched the savages, and we watched the judge's foul mixture drying in the rocks, and we watched the cloud making for the sun. One by one we give up watching the rock or the savage, either one, for the cloud did look to be dead set for the sun, and it would have took the better part of an hour to have crossed it, and that was the last hour that we had. Well, the judge was sitting making entries in his little book, and he saw the cloud, same as every other man, and he put down the book, and he watched it, and so do we all. No one spoke. There was none to curse and none to pray. We just watched, and that cloud just cut the corner from the sun and passed on, and there was no shadow fell upon us, and the judge took out his ledger and went on with his entries as before. I watched him. Then I clambered down and tested a patch of that stuff with my hand. There was heat coming off it. I walked along the rim, and the savages was ascending by every quarter, for there was no route to favor on the bald and gravel slope. I looked for rocks of any size to send down, but there was none. There was larger than your fist, just fine gravel and plates of scrag. I looked at Glanton, and he was watching the judge, and he seemed to have had his wits stolen. Well, the judge closed his little book, took out his leather shirt and spread it out in that cupped place, and called forth for us to bring the stuff to him. Every knife was out, and we went to scraping it up and cautioning us not to strike fire on the flints. And we heaped it up in his shirt, and he commenced to chop and grind with his knife. And Captain Glanton, he calls out, "Captain Glanton, would you believe it? Captain Glanton," he says, "come charge that swivel bowl of yours. Let's see what manner of thing we have here." Glanton come down with his rifle, and he scooped his charger full, and he charged both barrels and patched 2 balls and drove them home and capped the piece and made to step to the rim. But that was never the judge's way. "Down the maw of that thing," he says, and Glanton never questioned it. He went down to the pitch of the inner rim to where lay the terminus of that terrible flue, and he held his piece out over it, and he pointed it straight down and cocked the hammer, and he fired. You wouldn't hear a sound like that in a long day's ride. It gives me the fidgets.